What's Your Eye was a weird child story. Story 1. One day, my mom went out the back door in the kitchen to do something. Can't remember for what. I was only 4 or 5. So I locked it. I proceeded to get out 2 sticks of butter, a very large knife, and a watermelon. Mom was freaking out, but I told her she wasn't allowed inside yet. I cut the watermelon. Absolutely horrid job, but somehow managed not to cut myself. Smeared butter all over it, and then sat the slices on many paper towels I had laid on the floor. Unlocked the storm door and invited Mom inside to join my picnic. Story 2. One night at dinner, I sculpted a woman out of mashed potatoes. She had red Spanish rice hair and a chicken skin bikini. She reclined as though relaxing on a beach. When it was time to clean up, I claimed that it would be wrong on several counts to throw away mashed potato lady, and made several arguments about why she should be preserved. My mom, sensing a futile battle, allowed me to bag up mashed potato lady on a paper plate and stow her in the freezer, where she chilled for several years until we had to move. I tried to insist she was family and deserved to come to the new house with us, but somehow we came to the agreement that I could bury mashed potato lady in the backyard. And this was, I guess, agreeable to me. I got to dig a nice big hole, and she was honored with a funeral attended by the whole family. Words were spoken at her gravesite. I was really proud of that sculpture. Story 3. Like a lot of girls, I had Barbies. Not just Barbie herself, but Skipper and Kelly and Tommy. And a couple Kens. I had a specific checklist that had to be completed before I could actually do any playing. Remove clothes from Ken dolls. Tie each Ken's arms behind his back. I have no idea where I kept getting the string for this. Suspend Kens by their ankles from dresser drawer handles. Tie Tommy's arms behind his back. Wrap Tommy's face with string until it is completely covered. Blindfolding wasn't enough. His mouth and nose also had to be covered. Balance Tommy across Ken's arms. After all this, I could start acting out little scenes with the Barbies and other female dolls. But the weirdest thing to me is that the tying up part wasn't part of the game. It wasn't playing. It was just something that had to be done before I could play. After I was done, I'd get the guys back down, untie them, and dress them. Then everyone went back into the storage box together. Story 4. I have quite a few because I was a really weird kid. Told my 2nd grade class I was a witch. I could cast spells on people in exchange for candy. So if little Susie wanted John to like her, I would cast a love spell for a Snickers. If she didn't like that bitch Kathy, I could cast a bad spell on Kathy. Also told my 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade classmates that aliens are real and they visit Earth to abduct us and perform experiments. I watched a shit ton of those old alien documentaries and shows. We had to keep a weekly journal in 2nd grade detailing what we had done the previous weekend, and we bound it and gave it as a Father's Day present at the end of the year. One entry was literally something like, "We went to Costco," which is a wholesale retailer with tons of free food samples. There was so much food. It was like a picnic. I ate so much and had so much fun. Another entry was how proud I was of myself for eating like 5 slices of pizza in one day. Also thought I could control the wind until I was like 9 or 10. In spite of how weird I was, I'm a well-adjusted, productive, healthy adult now. Still love free samples from Costco/Sam's though. Story 5. As a kid, I was afraid of a lot of things, but I wasn't great at communicating, so I would just scream whenever I got scared. My favorite example of this is when I was 3 or so, my mom took me to an ice skating rink. At this point in my life, I thought all ice skating rinks were on top of lakes, so I was afraid of the ice breaking and me falling into the water. Naturally, I didn't communicate this to anyone. So when I was put on the ice, I started screaming bloody murder, as my mom would say. She thought I was afraid of falling, so she gave me one of those things you use when you're first learning to skate and pushed me around the rink, because in her eyes, if she showed me I wouldn't fall, I would calm down. This obviously did nothing to comfort me, and I was still convinced I was going to break through the ice and drown, so I continued to scream. After one lap, I'm sure the only thing my mom was thinking was, well, we're never doing that again. Years later, I asked to go ice skating again, and my mom refused to let me go due to the fiasco that happened last time. By this point, I knew that all indoor rinks had floors underneath the ice, so I told my mom I wasn't afraid of drowning anymore, so I'd be fine. She had quite a laugh after learning that was the cause of my 3-year-old skating disaster. Story 6. When I was around 7, my dad came home with a wolf. He'd been wanting to get one for a long time, and finally was able to buy one. He was very aggressive and started snapping at my mother, and he finally ran and hid under the bed in their bedroom. Now, I already had about 2 other dogs at the time, so I couldn't tell the difference between a dog and a wolf, and I assumed he posed no threat. So while my parents were arguing about the situation in the living room, I ran into their bedroom and looked under their bed and just saw a scared dog. I then proceeded to grab him by the tail and drag him into the living room. Literally. My mom, of course, freaks out, but everything was fine. We later took him to the vet and discovered that the reason he was so aggressive was because his previous owner kept him in a gravel-lined cage and starved him, so he then ate the gravel, and it became embedded in his throat. We paid for him to have surgery, and he became our best friend. I would lay with him in his doghouse at night, and he would sleep in my bed. My dad named him Ender after the book Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, as it was his favorite, and it's also the reason for my username. Ender, however, lived a short life and was hit by a car in the middle of the night and snapped his neck. Story 7. It should be noted that I was the firstborn grandchild of the firstborn son, the favorite one, as my mom teased me, in reference to my dad and me. My parents were older, and they'd been trying for a few years before I was born. No one told my parents that my behavior as an infant/toddler/child wasn't normal/was weird. Examples. I didn't cry as an infant unless I was gassy. I wasn't deaf. I jumped and responded to loud noises. I tracked things with my eyes. I just didn't cry. More than that, I smiled a lot. When I was a month old, there was a music box thing in my crib. You'd wind it up, it'd sing and move, that kind of thing. This is on tape, by the way. One day, the box runs down while my parents are cooing over my cute self. Before my parents could wind it up, I, who had been sucking on my fist, reached out and hit it. It started working for another minute. This wasn't a one-time incident. After that time, whenever my toys would wind down, I would hit them to make them work again. I used to have tea parties with dead people. According to my mother, I would regularly talk to people who had died long before I was born. Her stepfather, several great-grandparents, and later on after he passed, my mother's brother. Apparently I didn't understand what being dead meant until he was gone, and came back for a while. I didn't understand why he couldn't pick me up anymore. After the aforementioned death of my uncle, my school gave me some tests to make sure that I wasn't autistic, and that I could emotionally handle going from pre-k into kindergarten. The tests consisted of them having me walk up and down stairs, count to 10, name colors/shapes, etc. They held up the color cards and asked me what it was. I looked the tester in the eye and said I'd rather not continue the test, please. Spoiler, I didn't go to kindergarten. They stuck me in young fives. I would look at my mom's medical texts. She was an RN, and she had a bunch of books that included trauma pictures. This might account for me being the only girl in my health class who didn't get sick when we watched a video detailing open heart surgery. I always wanted to be the prince when playing pretend. It weirded other girls and boys out. Story 8. I wanted to be a gladiator when I grew up. My mom misunderstood and thought her daughter wanted to be like one of the American gladiators and encouraged me to be more athletic and active. But no, I wanted to straight up be a Roman gladiator warrior princess with the armor and gladius, fighting goddamn lions. So I practiced with a stick and a trash can lid against trees, against bushes, and against the neighbor kids, who were also armed with sticks and very confused about the whole thing. One day, I decided to pit myself against the neighbor's dog, Happy. I didn't want to hurt Happy, it was just practice after all. So I figured I could just practice escaping from him. The goal was to get across his enclosure and jump the fence before he caught me. So I climbed into the dog's pen, and the neighbors found me on top of his doghouse trying to convince him to give me my sword back. Explaining to my mom what the hell I was doing with my life was difficult. Story 9. I made up something called the Blood Song and sang it to my family for Christmas when I was about 5. The lyrics went something like this. Are you bleeding? Are you bleeding? You're bleeding. You fell down the stairs, and now you're bleeding. And then it just repeated over and over. The Blood Song didn't have an ending. My parents thought that shit was hilarious. Also, I hated pants. My mom had to force me to wear pants. I don't mean I just wanted dresses. I mean I literally just ran around in my underwear. Story 10. Oh Lord. So, my dad built a swing for me with a single rope and a round seat, rope going through the middle. Side detail. I, a female, like to pretend to shave with popsicle sticks and shaving cream, and my mom regularly dressed me in stretchy pants. So one day, for whatever reason, I put shaving cream all over my face in a beard shape, put on a raincoat, and I went to my backyard to swing. I'm twisting around, wee and shit, and I go to get up, and my stretchy pants get stuck. So I shout for my mom, who comes outside and tries to stifle laughter as she takes in the scene, and my brother's 12-year-old friend also comes to the backyard, looking for my brother. So she tries with all her might, but can't get me unstuck, and tells me, sweetie, you're gonna have to take off your pants. Dear God, no, just cover up with the raincoat, it's long enough. So I do so, and for some reason continue to stand there, while she attempts to free my pants. I think I was crying or some shit, and my brother's friend is just watching silently. No emotion, just enthralled with my child drama. Side note, we lived in community housing with a chain link fence in our backyard, and there was a path that ran behind all the houses. I heard noise, and a group of kids from my class walked by my backyard. So my mom, brother's friend, and kids from my elementary class witnessed me pantsless, crying, in a raincoat on a not rainy day with shaving cream on my face. I still have my brother's friend on Facebook to this day. He got super hot, and I'm hoping to God he doesn't remember it. Nobody in my class mentioned seeing me, so maybe they didn't recognize me. In another sort of similar story, I had an inflatable pool, and we had these fabric water balls that absorbed water and got bigger. This is early 2000s Britney Spears era, and the windows are open. My grandma is visiting, and she and my sister are in the living room by the window facing the backyard. I shove these balls in my swimsuit and begin sexy dancing, saying, I have boobies, I'm Britney Spears, I'm a SSLAAAV for you, Allah. I look at the window and my sister is laughing her ass off at me, and my grandma has a what the F is this little Jezebel doing? Look on her face, and I freeze and sink into the pool. I miss my grandma. Rest in peace. You were a wonderful woman for not saying anything about that. Jesus, I was effing weird. Still am, to be honest. Story 11. I used to pee behind the couch when I was little and blamed it on the cat. That was the weird part. So everyone thinks the car is peeing behind the couch. My cousins and I want to play hide and seek. 6 of us total. I was the first to seek, so I counted to 100, or however high I could count back then, and I started searching. Suddenly I get the urge to pee, so I stand up on the couch and release the flow. I had been drinking juice all day, so it was a lot. After I am done, I go back to seeking. Like 4 minutes later, my mom yells my whole name. First, middle, and last. I knew I was in trouble. I run upstairs, and there is my cousin, soaked head to toe in urine. My mom asked him why he didn't say anything, and he said, "I didn't want to get caught." And that is my weird childhood story.